Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas. Dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandal and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up, to stand up and fight back.
Welcome to Speak Up. I'm Representative Kevin Avard here, and I'm with Michael
Reyes.
And
Yes.
I want to welcome you to the show.
Oh, thank you very much.
And Michael is going to potentially be a petitioner for the redress of grievance here
Correct.
in New Hampshire if we continue to have the committee. And,
Correct.
So welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you very much.
I want to let our guests know that being a petitioner, you obviously have a case that is before you, and you feel as though you've not been adjudicated properly, or?
Well, correct.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your story.
Well, my story starts August 5th of this year. I was sitting in the couch in the house having a slice of pizza, and my soon-to-be ex-wife came out and said some nasty things. You know, it got a little nasty. She went to the refrigerator and said, and it's in her petition for protective order, this stupid guy left the refrigerator door open in front of my 4-year-old daughter. We got into an argument about that, you know, a nasty argument. We shouldn't have gotten into a nasty argument in front of the kids. Mm-hmm. But some things you have to put your foot down. I'm not going to let anyone speak about me that way in front of my children. And what she didn't say that. What she said was, "Your stupid father." That's what angered me. Anyways, I told her, look, I'm going to take my daughter to Chuck E. Cheese. We live in Manchester. She's like, you're not taking her anywhere. I'm like, I just didn't want to continue the argument. I left. I left for the day. I turned off my phone because I didn't want, I used to get nasty messages from her often. The marriage was over at that point. It was just deteriorating completely. And I went to visit some friends. Later that night, I turned on my phone. I get a message from my sister, who's in Miami, Florida, telling me the police, she called the police, they're looking for you. I called her. I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, oh, no. They're not looking at you for what happened. They're looking at you because they found a bag with some guns. Well, I own guns. I've never had my civil rights restricted. Mm-hmm. It's perfectly legal. In her country where she's from, it's not the United States of America. They don't have the same mentality we do. For them,
she's from El Salvador?
From El Salvador. And guns are taboo, more or less. It's because of the Civil War, they have their issues with the Second Amendment. I called the Manchester Police Department, spoke to the night lieutenant, told them what happened, told them my side. He's like, can you come in? I can't come in now. I'm having car problems. I was in Massachusetts at the time. I'll come in tomorrow. I go to the house the next morning. I speak to her sister. I see my daughter. That's the last time I saw my daughter, by the way. I have a 1-year-old son who just turned 1 last week, and I wasn't able to see him either. I go to the Manchester Police Department. I meet with Detective Nolan and Detective Kim, I think his name is, K-E-I-M. Tell them what happens. I'm not in custody. I'm not arrested. I'm there voluntarily. And the report shows that I was there voluntarily. They're like, do you have any other weapons? I'm like, sure, I have lots of weapons, and I don't want them in her hands. Because to me right now, this is going a little crazy, and I don't know what she's going to do. We go back to the house, and I turn him over while the investigation is pending.
Did they say you had to turn them over?
No. I did it voluntarily. I believe in the Second Amendment.
Let me ask you a question before you do it. Did they return your guns back to you?
No.
How long have you been without your guns?
Since August 5th. Or August 6th, excuse me. But I was okay with it because I really didn't know if she was losing her mind. There is a history of mental illness in her family. And the life of my kids are much more important. Mm-hmm. Things were just too unsettled. I could always replace a gun. Okay. I cannot replace my children. That is, any parent can tell you that.
Right.
So that wasn't as important to me at the moment. It isn't as important as seeing my children. So I turned it over to them. They don't arrest me. The police report shows they were not going to arrest me. And that's it. I figured that when she found out they weren't going to arrest me, she goes and gets a civil restraining order petition. As part of her petition, She states he was arrested today from the assault from yesterday.
Say that again?
He was arrested today, August 6th, for the assault from yesterday, which would be August 5th.
And there wasn't an assault, obviously.
There wasn't an assault. There wasn't an arrest.
Right. And that's documented.
Of course, I can show you the police report now if you need it.
Yeah.
Amongst other things, she said that she had fled Florida with one of the children because of abuse. Other things that she said in her petition. Florida has very good laws. When people are abused and you flee, you have to do two things. You're allowed to use that as a defense. Of course, you don't want people to be in danger, to stay put, get killed easily.
Right.
You have to report it within 10 days to the local sheriff of the county you fled. And you have to file a petition for custody within a reasonable amount of time. That's Florida law. New Hampshire has a problem, the Supreme Court, with, there's many cases that come from Florida. Somehow they wind up in New Hampshire. I wonder why. Anyways, they said they could adjudicate things that happen in Florida, but they don't have to respect Florida law.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
Anyways, 30 days go by. I'm out of the house, very little money. If it wasn't for the charity of some of my coworkers, I would have been in serious trouble. The only reason I kept the car, which she put in her petition that she had one, she had two, multiple cars, was because the police in New Hampshire, the Manchester, who I cannot complain about. Honestly, I come from Miami, Florida, where we complain about the police all the time and we have problems with them, but at least they treated me with respect and honor. I have to give them all respect for that. They refused to enforce the part where the judge ordered them to take the car away.
They were going to be forced to take your car away?
Well, it's under her name, but there's two, so it wouldn't be fair for her to keep one or both of them.
Okay.
Basically, the police officer called her outside of my presence, so I don't know exactly what he told her, but he wrote in the petition, the plaintiff says he can keep the car, and he put his badge number in his name.
Okay.
So basically, he couldn't do that legally. He could have gotten in trouble for that because the judge ordered it, he had to enforce it. So basically, the Manchester police refused to enforce that part. We had the hearing. Prior to that, I filed several motions with the court. One of them is to strike the petition for fraud upon the court, saying, this is an objective fraudulent statement. I was not arrested. Here's the police reports that say he was not arrested.
Okay.
You cannot commit a fraud upon, that's called a fraud upon the court, perjury.
Let me just interject, and we'll stick with that part. But you are
I have a Juris Doctorate from St. Thomas School of Law in Miami, Florida.
okay.
I work as a paralegal. I'm not a licensed attorney, but I practice representing myself in several cases, civil cases.
That's fine. So, just trying to get a little background as far as what you do for a living. All right. I'm sorry I interjected there, but I wanted our viewers to know. So, all right, go from that point on.
So I filed my motion to strike for fraud upon the court.
Right.
I don't remember the exact name, but I filed it. And a motion to strike for alleging criminal conduct by the petitioner herself. In other words, that she fled Florida due to domestic violence without having followed Florida law. It's, in my opinion, if someone were to come to you and say, you're the judge, I committed a murder in another state, but I haven't been charged. Well, how would you take that?
Right.
Well, I can tell you exactly how a Manchester court takes that.
Can Florida extradite?
If they were to charge her, yeah, if it was true. The problem is that what she said in her petition, not only is it against the law, but it's not true.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm going to explain to you easily why.
Yep, keep going.
We go to the hearing, which is September 4th. At first, the judge doesn't want to hear the motions. He's asking me, should we hear this after the testimony? And well, Your Honor, then it becomes redundant. We can't really have a motion to strike the petition after you already heard the argument, because the whole purpose of this is to strike it before we get to hearing the arguments, the testimony. His ruling was, not that it wasn't false, because she said that some police officer, an unnamed police officer, an unnamed female police officer, told her that I was arrested, and that she didn't add the language, that it was added by the lady down there. Those were her words, in quote. Well, she didn't elaborate. The judge did not allow us to get into, well, who exactly is the lady down there? And if you look at the petition,
right,
her handwriting, which she uses, she's a well-educated woman. She's 4 credit hours away from her master's. This is not a typical unsophisticated litigant. She's testified before in court on my behalf. Anyways, It's different. The part where she stops and someone else writes, or she had someone else write, he was arrested today for the assault from yesterday, is completely different.
All right, so there's perjury here.
There is perjury, and there's possibly state-assisted perjury.
And who in the state would have assisted?
It could have been a clerk. It could have been Judge Lemire, who was then marital master Lemire. And I'm mentioning that for a very specific reason. Well, the judge ruled, not that it wasn't true that I was arrested, not that it wasn't a fraud upon the court. What he ruled was that I should have set that hearing before the judge who originally signed the motion. Well, there's a problem. In New Hampshire, I can't pick up the phone, call the judicial assistant of the judge and say, I want to set this motion for hearing. The clerk is the one that picks which motion they're going to set for hearing, which they had before.
Right.
And they pick which judge they're going to put on there.
Excuse me, so what you're saying is, here in New Hampshire, the court, your hearings are not time-stamped, they're basically cherry-picked, basically.
Yes, and they ignore the hearings that they don't want heard.
Right, and so if you are would you disagree that if you're a pro se litigant, you kind of become a despised litigant and you're put on the back? I'm feeding words into your mouth.
Sure.
But what I've heard in the past is, because I'm a pro se litigant and it's not time-stamped, that the judge can cherry-pick which case he wants to hear or she wants to hear at any time. And generally, if you are pro se, you have no idea when it's going to be. It's just ad hoc.
Correct.
Am I incorrect there?
Correct, and that is one of my biggest complaints about the rules of civil procedure in New Hampshire.
In Florida, it's not that way.
No,
You go in, you go to the clerk, they stamp it, okay, this is your court date.
No, this is how it actually works. Usually, it depends on the county. We have 70 counties, I think, in Florida, so they're all a little different. But they all follow the same rules of civil procedure. So it's not impossible in a state with 16 million people to do it, but not in a state with 1.2 million, I believe. You call the other side, if they're represented by an attorney, and you say, look, can you give me some dates we can have a hearing on X? You know, a 5-minute hearing or 15 minutes or half an hour, sometimes longer, it depends.
Right.
And let's say you're going to have a motion for summary judgment. That's 30 minutes usually. And you tell me, well, I can hear it December 1st. I call the clerk or the judicial assistant for the judge. Do you have any times available on December 1st? Yes, I have 1:30. Okay. You draft the notice. You send it to the other side, and you file the original notice with the clerk.
Okay.
That's it. And it works perfectly.
And now, how does New Hampshire work?
Well, you file your motion, you send a request for a hearing to the clerk, and then you don't get it.
That's, okay.
And I'm going to get to, because there's the...
All right, let's move this along.
Right.
All right, yeah.
Anyways, we hear the motion for the crime. She's alleging crimes. You can't really have a petitioner alleging crimes, even if it's not true. So and I told the court, this is not true, but she's still alleging crime. This is, you know, impermissible. You can't say, you know, I killed this person, but I need protection from his family. You can't say that. You know, those aren't grounds. His reasoning was, well, she hasn't been charged or indicted, so there's no crime. Well, that's not correct. I'm almost positive, you know, it's been a while, so it's not verbatim, but it was that. That's what he said. Well, that's not exactly correct. Just because you're not charged with the crime doesn't mean it didn't happen. It just means you got away with it. Two different things.
Okay.
At the hearing, she said that she had reported to her doctors that there was a history of domestic violence. I produced the medical records from my daughter, her first visit ever to a doctor in New Hampshire in 2009, where she denied that there was a history of domestic violence.
Was that accepted by the judge?
It was accepted, and it was put to the side, and I looked at it.
Okay.
See, an evidentiary hearing, the way it's conducted in New Hampshire, it's not really an evidentiary hearing, it's a bench trial. In an evidentiary hearing, the judge asks questions. There's a back and forth. You're trying to clarify certain things.
Versus a bench trial. Tell me what that is.
A bench trial is, you have your plaintiff, your defendants, and they're saying their arguments to the court, and the court makes a decision. An evidentiary hearing is to try to get to the bottom of what's happening.
Okay.
It's different. People think it's actually quite different. But in New Hampshire, they have bench trials. They're not having evidentiary hearings. An evidentiary hearing, like I said, the judge asks questions, tries to clarify things, tries to get to the bottom of it. That's why it's called an evidentiary hearing.
Is that something you would see in a superior court?
That is something that I've seen in every court except for courts in New Hampshire.
Okay,
to be honest with you.
okay.
We get there, she says that, she said her, whatever she said. And I said, isn't it true that in October 2003, a girl, I wasn't married at the time with her, isn't it true that this person came and told you that I was dating her too, and that you attacked me, broke all the windows of my car? Yes, it's true. Okay. Isn't it true that you went to the police and told them that I had pulled a gun on you guys, and I was never charged or arrested? Yeah, and you begged me not to tell them the truth. Okay. But you did do this, yes. That's in 2003. Okay. There were other things like that. Well, the whole time I'm asking questions, cross-examining, the judge is like, are we done? Are we done? Are we done? You know, he wanted to go eat his lunch or play golf, whatever it was. I've dealt with judges before. I know exactly how they operate. You know, I impeached her character. There was a time she said, I started reading text messages. I still have them saved in my phone. One of them was, you know, if you come back, I'm going to get you in trouble with the police, something like that. On July 27, 2012, this year. She's like, yes, because you got violent with me on that day. Like, isn't it true that I was in Tampa, Florida, taking the bar exam on that day? Oh, I don't know where you were. I mean, well, the thing is, if we're going to use a preponderance or the evidence, if you're going to state that I got violent with you, well, I would have had to have been in your presence.
So moving this right along, you're basically imputing her character, and the judge, in your opinion, is not taking this into consideration. It's basically being set aside. So after this part, now what?
Well, here comes the best part. She told the police on August 5th that I punched her in the right arm. She told the judge that I punched her in the chest.
All right, so she contradicted herself.
And when I asked her about that, I don't remember what I told the police. The judge issues his ruling 2 weeks later. I don't get it for a while longer. And his ruling is, if I could look real quick.
Sure.
It's actually quite disturbing. To find abuse, he punched her. Well, did I punch her in the right arm, in the chest, or in her imagination? In New Hampshire, it doesn't matter.
Because she alleged that you punched her.
It doesn't matter where.
Right.
Even though she told the police 30 days before a different location of the body. Let's make it more serious. Let's say she would have said, he stabbed me. He stabbed me on the right arm. At trial, she says, he stabbed me in the chest. But the police evidence says, there's no evidence he ever stabbed her. In New Hampshire, under this kind of standard review, it wouldn't matter. You stabbed her.
All right. Were there bruises?
No.
Did you punch her?
No. No.
Did you touch her?
No.
And there was no evidence either way when she filed did she show the police?
The police reports clearly show there's lack of physical evidence.
Okay.
So no, there's no bruising, no marks. If there had been, I would have been arrested.
Okay. So without any evidence from this point, now the judge just said, well we're just going to cut to the chase. We can't determine whether it's the arm or the chest, so we're just going to say he punched her.
Right.
And in the ruling, without evidence, without a police report backing that up,
Correct.
There's a ruling. And the ruling is now what?
I cannot come closer for 100 yards, have any communication, direct or indirect. He granted her custody and denied me visitation pending hearing, even though at the conclusion of the hearing, she said she had no problem with me having visitation. And his ruling was, I haven't granted your motion yet, so I can't grant visitation.
Now, has a guardian ad litem been
No.
appointed? Or has it been suggested?
Not yet.
Okay. Where are you at in this stage?
In between her filing her original petition and the final hearing, she filed for divorce. I was not served until after the petition, after the hearing. And the judge is Judge Lemire. Of course, I've done a motion for recusal for two reasons. One, she implicated possibly Judge Lemire in the actual fraud upon the court. Two, at first appearance, my soon-to-be ex-wife requested mediation. I accepted. Judge Lemire sua sponte denied it, in violation of RSA 147, I believe, where it says mediation is mandatory in divorce cases, except where there's allegations of domestic violence, unless the parties agree.
And the parties do not agree.
The parties agree. She requested it, and I agreed.
But the judge is going against, is that a court rule? That's a statute.
That's a statute, and the judge is going against statutory law. The reason being, on her first appearance was October 17th.
Is that in writing?
Yeah, I don't have it in this file. This is domestic violence. But yes, I have that. That's not a problem. Whatever I'm saying, I can back up. I know how to document. The first appearance was October 17th. She has a lawyer now. She did not have a lawyer for this hearing. Her lawyer on October 4th, I believe, filed a motion to waive first appearance and set it for temporary hearing. I did a motion in opposition to that, saying, no, let's get this over with, because since September 13th, I had sent her lawyer a parenting plan, trying to get this resolved as quickly as possible.
Okay.
There's no allegations that I've abused my children sexually or any ways. She hasn't made that allegation. DCYF was referred the case by the Manchester police. It was found unfounded. There's no allegations of, of abuse to the children. So just try to resolve this. Plus, my son's birthday was October 24th. Now, I filed an emergency motion for visitation saying, I want to see my son for his first year, his first birthday. I got no response to that. See, I'm going to remember those things. I'm not going to forget, ever.
So the divorce is not final, obviously.
It's not final.
And that is going on. The custody is still in limbo at this point?
I'm not even requesting custody.
Or visitation.
Visitation.
And that's still in limbo at this point. And how long has it been since you?
Since August 5th.
Since August 5th.
That's why I'm trying to nip this in the bud.
Right, because obviously you've seen where some parents have not seen their children for 3 years.
Exactly.
Having not committed a crime.
Exactly.
And you have not been convicted of any crimes?
No.
Okay. Are you looking for legal assistance, or are you going to be filing a petition because of the way the courts, do you feel that the due process has been violated?
Well, the Supreme Court of the U.S. has a very good case that says, when you have the facade of due process, but it's not really applied, it's actually worse than not having the facade at all.
Are we talking about the color of law?
Let's call it the color of due process. So due process is much more than just going before the judge and him pretending or her pretending to hear you. That's not due process. Due process is going before a judge who's truly impartial and giving both sides a fair shot.
And you don't feel that this judge has been impartial?
No. What Judge Emery, which was the judge who heard the domestic violence case there, was allow perjury. Coming from law school, he went to law school, I went to law school. Everyone who has a Juris Doctorate, one of the things that's impacted on us, actually two things. One is confidentiality. We do not violate confidentiality. It's just really impacted on us. Two, perjury. There's no lower life form than he who goes to court and perjures himself. And what he did was allow someone who perjured their statement. Period. I was not arrested.
Knowingly?
He knowingly allowed it.
Right.
He went around the law by saying, I have no power to grant this because I'm not the judge who originally granted the motion. Well, Supreme Court precedent says that the trial judge has final say on all non-final judgments on any issue prior to granting final judgment. So what he did was allow perjury in his courtroom. Now, this is me. I can defend myself. I know the law. I know how to argue it in court. What about the people who don't? What's happening to them?
Right.
And if this is happening in family law or domestic violence law, what's happening in the criminal laws?
Well, we don't hear a whole lot of complaints in those areas. A lot of them have actually come from the family courts. And that's why there's been an uproar for the last 20, 30 years because people are arguing with the rules of the courts, how that they're kind of making them up as they go, whether it's Rule 1.2, where there's a waiver of rules in the interest of justice.
Right.
And that's why we have this big push recently for CACR 26, and many people are basically tired of the head bashing with their due process.
Correct.
And originally, the courts derived its power from the people through the legislature, which gave it its authority. Now it's become pretty much autonomous and unanswerable to anybody.
Correct.
And that's not the way it was designed. The people should have some say, obviously, not undue influence as well, but CACR 26, which is on this year's ballot, allows the people to speak up, and if there's a rule that's injuring individuals, at least they can have a say, through their legislature,
Sure.
how to make remedy,
Sure.
as long as it doesn't violate the Constitution.
Of course.
And so anyway, where are we going to go from here? Did you say something that you were going to file a lawsuit with the feds? Or?
Well, I filed a notice of discretionary appeal
Mm-hmm.
with the Supreme Court of New Hampshire on the domestic violence case.
Right.
I'm giving them a chance to correct what was done. They know it's wrong. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. If you allow perjured testimony in your court, if you knowingly allow perjured testimony in your courtroom, there's a big problem.
Right. You
Huge
lose
problem.
faith in the justice system, and they don't want to do that.
Well, the grievance committee is a warning.
Mm-hmm.
The call for the grievance committee is a warning. It's a cry. We have a problem. Because what comes after is going to be much worse.
Right.
Okay? So I filed the appeal. If they don't grant it or if they deny it, I'm just going to file a 1983 action in federal court for injunctive relief against all these judges. And the state of New Hampshire could have the humiliation, whether I win or lose, of having been sued in federal court. If I lose, well, I lose nothing. But if they lose their little game. It's that simple. See, there's nothing that a judge in New Hampshire could do to me that Fidel Castro had not done to me by the age of 5. Nothing. I'm never going to back down. I'm not going to go away. It's that simple.
By the way, to our viewers, you're of Cuban descent.
I am a Cuban descent.
And you're a naturalized citizen.
I am a naturalized citizen.
And you've migrated or immigrated up to this way.
Well, more or less a refugee.
Yeah.
Oh.
A refugee. Well, welcome to America.
It's been 35 years now.
Yeah. You don't look that old.
I'm 37.
37.
I'm an old man.
Yay. Yeah. Well, we wish you the best. And what is there anything else that you want to bring up as far as what stages you're at? Or
No, I mean, I'd like to see some real reforms.
Yeah.
I think some simple reforms like making the judicial calendar available to the litigants to set motions is a big step. In other words, they just can't ignore your motion. It's set for hearing. Whether it's granted or denied, you get to your say. I think that the biggest problem is you have appointed judges at the lower courts.
So you're looking for term limits or?
I would say elected judges.
Elected judges. See, we've had some discussion about that, and I think everything has its pros and cons. Representative Guida, I believe, brought up an idea of a 5-year term with review or something to that effect.
Right.
And that way, if the judge is doing a great job, hey, hats off.
Sure.
Madam Judge or whatever, Your Honor. If not, based upon your review, then you're not going to be reissued, and that in itself would seem to have a good check and balance.
Right.
Because if these judges can operate without any recourse,
Right.
Sure they can go to the JCC, but that's made up of
They're friends.
hello. So. And I'm sure there's good intentions to have that review board, but if there's a 5-year review with state reps, senators,
Right.
Outside people, and on and on, they can figure that out, then it holds them accountable to some standard.
Right. The problem with appointed judges at the lower level is that you have political appointees who are there because of their politics, not because of their qualifications.
Yeah, but the politics will swing back and forth, and I'm not going to argue with the merits or not. But you'll have conservative ones, liberal ones, and it's going to be a mess. And then there's going to be elections, and
it works well in other states. Yeah. That's the thing. It works perfectly well in other states.
Yeah.
And New Hampshire, being a state with a small population, should be an example for the rest of the country.
Right.
And not the shame that it's going through.
Well, I think now that we have a redress of grievance committee, and let's hope Speaker O'Brien becomes the speaker again, and we have this committee because it is giving voice.
Right.
And it's holding a high standard. So I'm going to end this conversation at this point. We're going to let the people look at this, and maybe some state reps will be able to sponsor you in your petition. You are going to be filing a petition?
Oh, yes, I'll be filing a petition.
Okay, perfect. And any way people can contact you?
They could call me at my telephone number, 755-2143. I still have my old number.
Okay.
Or my email, m_33135@yahoo.com.
Say that again, and just a little bit slow.
m_33135@yahoo.com.
Okay, and you're located in Manchester?
Manchester.
Manchester. Well, I want to thank you, Michael, for coming on the show.
Pleasure.
And thank you for watching Speak Up. And if you have any suggestions or you want to help Michael in his process, please give him a call. And if you want to become a sponsor of this show, email me at speakupnh@gmail.com or send me a letter at speakup@68 Bartimus Trail, Nashua, New Hampshire, 03063. Until next week, thanks for watching Speak Up.
Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas. Dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandals and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up, to stand up and fight back.